The station was always loud, but the trading day was the noisiest. Voices rose and fell as merchants called out the worth of their goods. Bright signs flashed in different languages above each stall. The air was heavy with the smell of cooked food, engine oil, and the strange perfume of flowers brought from distant planets. Old human trader Rami walked slowly through the narrow lanes. His boots tapped against the metal floor as he passed sellers offering all kinds of things. Rare tools, shiny stones, bottles of glowing liquid. He had been on this station many times. But today he walked with no real plan. He was simply looking beyond the main lanes. The market changed. Here the light was dimmer, and the stalls were made of rough metal and cloth. This was the part of the market people called the Market of Shadows. It was not an official name, but everyone knew it. This was where things were sold that many would rather not see. Rami had been here before. He knew the cages would come next. Small ones held animals from other worlds. Some were harmless and sat quietly. Others hissed or clicked their teeth when he passed. Bigger cages were different. They held people. Servants, the signs said in bold letters. Some had collars around their necks. Others had their hands bound. Their eyes followed anyone who walked near. Some were tired, some were angry, and some had no strength left to show any feeling at all. Rami kept walking until he heard a voice call out, "Human, come see my best bargain." A merchant stood beside a cage that was low to the ground. Inside sat a small alien with gray skin and large black eyes. She had no teeth when her mouth opened slightly, and her thin arms were held close. To her chest, a metal chain was round one ankle, fixed to the bars. She is quiet. The merchant said, "Does not eat much, works without complaint, very obedient." Rami stepped closer. The alien, who could not have been more than half his height, looked away when his shadow fell across her. She seemed younger than the others, though it was hard to tell with her kind. Her head tilted slightly as if she was listening for danger. "What is her name?" Rami asked. "Vela," the merchant said. "At least, that is what her last owner called her." Rami studied her face. Her skin was marked with faint lines, like the patterns of waves and sand. She did not meet his gaze, but when he moved to the side, her eyes flicked toward him for just a moment. There was no aggression there, only caution. He could tell she was afraid, but not broken. "How long has she been here?" he asked. "Too long," the merchant replied. "No one wants a servant with no teeth. She cannot bite or chew tough food. She is weak, but she can still clean, carry light things, and follow orders." Rami did not reply right away. His mind was turning over thoughts he could not fully explain, even to himself. He had seen many servants in his life, but something about this one was different. He felt as if she was waiting for something, even if she did not know it herself. The merchant gave a number for her price. It was not high. Rami could afford it without trouble. He looked at Vela again, this time. She met his gaze directly for half a second before looking away again. "I will take her," Rami said. The merchant's eyebrows rose. "Are you sure? She is not much use." "I am sure." A small device was brought out to confirm the trade. Rami pressed his thumb to the screen, and the merchant unlocked the cage. The chain on Vela's ankle was removed. She did not move until Rami held out his hand. She stood slowly, her thin legs trembling, and stepped out of the cage. The crowd in the Market of Shadows went on as if nothing had happened. Merchants shouted, buyers bargained, and somewhere a voice laughed loudly. But for Vela, the world had already changed. The bars were behind her now. Rami led her away from the cage. She followed without a word, keeping a small distance between them. They walked past the animals, past the bright stalls, past the smell of food and the hum of machines. Vela kept her head low, her eyes moving quickly to take in the open space. Around her dot at the edge of the market, they reached a lift that rose to the upper levels of the station. The doors closed behind them, and the noise faded. Vela glanced at the smooth walls of the lift, then at Rami. She still did not speak. "You will not be going back there," Rami said, his voice steady. "No more cages." She did not reply, but her eyes met his again. There was still fear in them, but now there was also a small light that had not been there before. The lift opened to a quieter corridor. Rami's home was near the outer ring of the station, a small space filled with tools, shelves, and the smell of warm metal. He pointed to a chair, and Vela sat carefully, as if unsure if she was allowed. From a cabinet, Rami brought a bowl of soft food. Eat, he said simply. Vela looked at it for a moment before taking a small bite. The food melted in her mouth, and her shoulders lowered slightly. She took another bite, then another, as if testing whether the kindness would vanish. When the bowl was empty, she set it down and looked at him again. Rami gave a short nod. You will rest now. There's a bed through there. Vela hesitated before standing and walking toward the small room he had pointed to. She stepped inside, touching the blanket with her hand. It was softer than anything she had felt before. She sat, then lay down slowly, her eyes still open. Rami left her there and returned to his workbench outside. The station lights shifted to evening mode inside. Vela lay in the bed, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. She had been bought before, but never by someone who opened a door instead of closing it. The station's morning lights were bright when Vela woke. She had slept, but her sleep was not deep. Her mind had wandered through strange dreams, open skies she had never seen, and voices she could not understand. The blanket around her was still warm from her body. She sat up slowly, expecting at any moment to hear a command or the sound of chains. Instead, she heard the quiet sound of tools being used. Rami was at his workbench, turning a small metal device in his hands. He did not look up right away, but when he did, he gave a small nod. You can come here, he said. Vela stepped out of the small room and stood near the edge of the workbench. She watched as he tightened a screw on a panel. The smell of metal oil filled the air. On the wall behind him, shelves held parts, tools, and small boxes. It was nothing like the dark storage rooms she had been kept in before. You will need food, Rami said. He placed his tool down and went to the small cooking unit in the corner. He prepared another bowl of soft food, warm and gentle on the tongue. Vela ate quietly, glancing at him between bites. She still did not understand why he spoke calmly to her, why he gave her food without demanding work in return. When the bowl was empty, Rami spoke again. I will go to the outer streets today. You will come with me. Vela blinked. Outside. Yes, he said. You are not a prisoner here. You can walk. She followed him to the door. The moment it opened, the scent of the station's open corridors washed over her air that carried hints of cooking spices, machine grease, and the faint floral scent from a nearby shop. They stepped into the wide walkway that curved with the ring of the station. Vela's steps were slow at first. She kept close to the wall, her eyes moving quickly. The noise of the market was far away now, replaced by the hum of passing workers and the software of delivery drones. Above them, the station ceiling rose high, with panels that shone like sunlight. They passed a stall selling fruit with skins like bright glass. The vendor called out to customers, but when his gaze landed on Vela, she lowered her eyes. Rami did not slow down, and she followed. Farther along, they reached a garden space. It was small, but it was filled with green plants and a fountain that trickled water into a stone basin. Vela stopped at the edge of the garden, staring at the water. She had seen water before, but never in such a peaceful setting. Rami stepped aside to let her look. You can touch it, he said. She moved closer and dipped her fingers into the cool water. The sound of it, the feel of it, was strangely calming. Her reflection looked back at her from the surface gray skin, wide eyes, and the faint scarf of light that came through the leaves above. For a moment, she forgot the market. They walked on until the path led to a wider street lined with shops. Some sold tools, others clothing or simple trinkets. A group of children ran past, laughing, their footsteps quick against the floor. Vela watched them disappear into the crowd, wondering how it would feel to move without fear. Rami stopped at a stall selling small mechanical birds that flapped their wings when wound up. The shopkeeper showed him a few, and Vela watched them hop across the table. Rami bought one and handed it to her. Yours, he said. She looked at the small metal creature in her hands. It was light, and when she turned the small key on its side, the wings moved in a soft clicking rhythm. She had never been given anything before, not even something so small. She held it carefully as they continued walking. By midday, they returned to Rami's home. Vela sat on the chair, the small bird in her hands, as Rami placed a few supplies on the table. He looked at her for a moment before speaking. "You were in that cage for a long time," he said, "but now you are here. I do not want you to be afraid to move, to see, to learn." Vela tilted her head. "Learn? Yes," he said. "Learn how to read, speak more words. Work with your hands. There are things you can do that no one has shown you yet." She thought about that. In the market, no one had cared what she could do. She had been told to stay quiet, stay still, and obey. The idea that she could learn something new was strange and uncertain, but not unpleasant. That evening, Rami showed her a small book with simple trade signs used in the station. The symbols were strange to her, but he pointed to each one and spoke its meaning. She repeated them slowly. Her voice was quiet but steady. They worked until the station lights dimmed to night mode. Vela sat with the book, tracing the shapes of the symbols with her finger. She still could not believe she was sitting here freely, without chains. Before going to rest, she placed the small mechanical bird on the table near her bed. It was hers, and it would be there when she woke. As she lay down, she thought about the water in the garden, the bright fruit in the stall, and the children's laughter. These were things she had never known in her life before today. And deep inside her, a thought began to take shape. Maybe the world outside the cage was bigger than she had ever imagined. The next morning began quietly. The soft hum of the station's power systems was the only sound in Rami's home. Vela opened her eyes to find the dim light of morning filtering through the small window. The mechanical bird still sat on the table where she had left it. She reached over, turned its small key, and watched the wings flap in their soft clicking rhythm. Rami was already at his workbench, sorting a small pile of tools. His hands moved with the ease of long practice, picking the right piece without even looking. When he noticed Vela awake, he gave a short nod. "You should eat before we start today," he said. Vela ate the warm food he set before her, soft and easy to chew. She ate slowly, as if still unsure if more would come tomorrow. When the bowl was empty, she waited, watching him. "Today," Rami said, "you will help me with my work. It will not be hard, but you will learn something new." Vela tilted her head. "Work?" "Yes," Rami replied. "Repairing small machines, cleaning parts, keeping tools in place. You have hands and a mind, both should be used." He brought out a box filled with small broken devices. Some were parts of door locks, others were tiny scanners used in trade. He showed her how to open one, how to wipe away the dust, and how to fit the pieces back together. At first, her fingers moved clumsily, and she dropped a small screw. She froze, expecting him to be angry. Instead, Rami simply picked it up, placed it back on the table, and said, "Try again." She tried again, and this time the screw stayed in place. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for the first time, she felt a hint of pride instead of fear. Through the day, Rami spoke to her in human words, pointing at objects and naming them. She repeated each word, her voice growing a little stronger each time. He corrected her gently when she said something wrong, never raising his voice. By midday, she could say the names of 10 tools without hesitation. She could also point out the correct symbol for metal from the trade sign book he had shown her before. It was a small step, but for her it felt like crossing a wide gap. In the afternoon, they took a break and walked to the garden space she had seen before. The water still flowed in the fountain, and the plants rustled faintly in the artificial breeze. Rami sat on a bench while Vela stood near the water. She placed her fingers in it again, letting the coolness wash over them. "Why do you let me do this?" she asked at last. Rami looked at her. "Because you are not a thing to be owned. You are a person. Where I come from, my people once had chains too. They learned to break them. They learned to live without fear. I want you to have the same. Vela was quiet. The idea of a whole people being free was hard to imagine. Her world had never been like that. She had been born into the shadow of chains, and even when her owners changed, the walls had stayed the same when they returned home. Rami gave her another task, sorting small parts into containers. Each piece had a place, and she quickly learned to tell them apart. Her hands were steady now, her movements sure. She even found herself humming a quiet tune she did not remember learning. That evening, as they sat at the table, Rami spoke again. "You are learning quickly. Soon you will be able to read most of the basic signs here. When you can read and speak more, you will be able to work for yourself if you wish." She frowned slightly. "Work alone?" "Yes," he said, "or you can stay here. That will be your choice." The words stayed in her mind long after they stopped talking. It was not something she had ever been given. Before, she had been told where to stand, what to carry, when to sleep. Now, he was saying the decision could be hers. She was not sure how to feel about that, hopeful, perhaps, but also afraid. As night fell, she returned to her small room. She looked at the mechanical bird again, then at her own hands. They were not strong, but they could work. They could learn. She thought of the fountain water, the soft scarf she had seen in a shop window earlier, and the sound of her own voice speaking human words for the first time in her life. She wondered what tomorrow might bring, not as something to fear, but as something to discover. Days passed on the station, each one quieter than the life Vela had known before. She was learning to read more signs, speak more words, and fix small machines. Every morning, she would turn the key of her little metal bird, watch its wings move, and feel a small comfort that it was still hers. One afternoon, Rami asked her to help clean the storage room. It was a small space at the back of his home, filled with boxes, old tools, and spare parts. Vela moved slowly among the shelves, wiping away dust and stacking items in neat rows. The work was not hard, and the quiet let her mind wander. She reached for a wooden crate on the lower shelf. When she pulled it forward, something metallic slid out and hit the floor with a sharp clink. She looked down. It was a broken chain. The metal links were old and rusted, but their shape was burned into her memory. For a moment, she could not move. The sight of it brought back the sound of keys turning in locks, the cold bite of metal on her ankle, and the weight that had followed her with every step. Her chest tightened, and her breath grew quick. Her hands began to shake. She took a step back, but the chain seemed to hold her eyes in place. It was as if the room had grown smaller. She could almost hear the voice of her former master, sharp and cold, calling her to work harder, faster, without rest. Rami appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowing when he saw her. He followed her gaze to the chain on the floor. Without a word, he stepped forward, picked it up, and set it on a high shelf where she could no longer see it. "It will not touch you again," he said. Vela turned toward him, her voice unsteady. "I thought I left it behind." "You did," Rami said, "but chains stay in the mind longer than they stay on the body. That is the hard part." She sat down on a small stool in the corner, her hands still trembling. "Why keep it here?" "It was for scrap," he answered. "I collect old metal and use it for repairs. I did not think about what it might mean to you." Rami leaned against the wall, his eyes thoughtful. "Where I come from. My people were once taken as slaves by others. They were chains too. It took many years before they broke free, even after they won their freedom. Some still woke at night thinking they were trapped again. The mind remembers." Vela looked at him. "How did they forget?" "They did not forget," he said. "They learned to live so strongly that the chains could not control them anymore. They taught their children to walk proudly and not to bow. They built homes and shared food and kept each other safe. Freedom is not something given once. It is something you keep every day." The words settled in her mind like slow-falling stones. She thought about the market, the cage, and the moment Rami had opened the door instead of closing it. She thought about the fountain water, the little bird, and the soft voice teaching her new words. These were not chains. Rami went to a nearby box and took out a small piece of bright cloth. It was a scrap from some old work, soft and clean. He handed it to her. Here, keep this instead. Let it remind you of now, not then. Vela held the cloth in her hands. It was pale blue, almost the same shade as the sky Rami had once described to her. From his home planet, she did not fully understand why the color made her feel lighter, but she did not question it. She folded it carefully and kept it close. The rest of the day, she moved through her work more slowly, but her mind was no longer trapped in the memory. Rami did not push her to hurry. They cleaned the rest of the storage room together, speaking little, but the silence felt steady, not tense. That night, Vela sat on her bed, the pale blue cloth resting beside her. She ran her fingers over it, thinking about what Rami had said. Chains could stay in the mind, but so could other things like the sound of water, the weight of the little metal bird, or the feel of soft cloth in her hands. She wondered if one day the memories of the cage would fade enough for her to walk through the market without fear. Maybe they would never vanish fully, but maybe they would not control her anymore. That thought made her feel just a little stronger. In the quiet, she turned the key of her bird and watched the wings flap. It clicked in time with her own slow breaths. She was still here. She was still free, and that was something worth holding on to. Morning came with the soft glow of the station's daylights. Vela woke to the familiar hum of the walls and the quiet click of Rami's tools. She rose from her bed and touched the pale blue cloth he had given her the day before. Its color still reminded her of calm water and open skies. She folded it carefully before stepping out into the main room. Rami was finishing repairs on a small scanner. When he noticed her, he smiled faintly. Today we will go to the market again, he said. Vela hesitated. The memory of her last trip there carried both curiosity and unease. The same market, she asked. Not the market of shadows, Rami replied. The open market, the place with food stalls, tools, and cloth sellers. I want you to see more of it. She nodded slowly. She still felt a twist of nervousness when thinking about walking through crowds, but she trusted Rami's words. They left his home and stepped into the curved walkway of the outer ring. The station was busy as always, people of different shapes and colors passing by. Speaking in many tongues, drones floated overhead, carrying small packages to their destinations. The scent of spices drifted from somewhere ahead. When they reached the open market, the noise grew louder. Merchants called out their prices, holding up goods for all to see. Bright cloth hung in long strips from stalls, swaying gently in the air. A shop displayed polished metal cups that shone like mirrors. Another stall had trays of glowing fruit in shades of gold and green. Rami guided Vela through the rows at a steady pace. Her eyes moved from one colorful sight to another. It was not like the dark corners of the shadow market. Here, everything seemed alive. After a while, Rami stopped in front of a stall selling scarves and wraps. The merchant, a tall figure with skin like polished stone, arranged the cloths with careful hands. The colors ranged from deep red to pale blue to bright yellow. Some were smooth as water, others soft and warm. Choose one, Rami said. Vela looked at him, unsure she had heard correctly. Choose. Yes, he said. Anyone you like. It will be yours. The idea felt strange. She had never been told to choose anything for herself. In her old life, every object had belonged to someone else. Even food had been given only when allowed. Now Rami was telling her to pick something not for work, but simply for her. She stepped closer to the stall, her fingers brushing the edge of a deep green scarf. It was soft and smooth. Next to it was one the color of gold and sand. Then her eyes fell on a pale blue scarf, the same shade as the cloth Rami had given her. She touched it gently. It was light, almost weightless, yet warm. This one, she said softly. The merchant smiled and handed it to her. Rami paid without question. Vela draped the scarf around her shoulders. It felt different from anything she had worn before. Not a sign of ownership, not a collar or mark, but something chosen by her own will. They walked on through the market. With each step, Vela became more aware of the scarf's light touch against her skin. It was not heavy like chains. It did not bind her. It simply rested there, a reminder that she had made a decision for herself. They stopped at a small food stall, where Rami bought warm bread filled with spiced vegetables. The vendor handed one to Vela. She took a small bite, and the flavor was rich and new. She realized that for the first time, she was eating something in a public place, not hidden. Away out as they sat at a bench to finish the food, Rami glanced at her. "How does it feel?" he asked. She touched the scarf. "It feels like mine." "That is because it is yours," Rami said. "The first of many things you will choose." The words settled deeply in her mind. She thought of the chain in the storage room and how heavy it had felt in her memory. This scarf felt like the opposite light. Open, free. After they finished, they walked toward the garden space. The fountain's water sparkled in the light. Vela leaned over the basin. Seeing her reflection, the scarf's pale blue color framed her face. For the first time, she thought she looked different, not because her shape had changed, but because something inside her had. When they returned home, Vela placed the scarf on her bed beside the pale blue cloth and the little bird. These were her things now. They were not much, but they were hers in a way no one could take. That evening, she worked beside Rami, sorting parts and practicing new words from the book. She spoke more clearly now, her voice steady, every time the scarf's edge brushed her arm. She remembered the moment she had reached out and claimed it. Before sleeping, she held the scarf in her hands for a long time. She thought about the market's bright colors, the smell of warm bread, and the sound of water in the fountain. She thought about how Rami had said there would be many things she would choose in her life. She was beginning to believe him. The sun of Ruvek Prime rose slowly, casting a pale golden light over the quiet valley. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of alien flowers that bloomed in the cool morning. Naren stepped outside his small farmhouse, his eyes scanning the horizon. Behind him, Lura followed, her feet making soft sounds on the wooden floor before stepping onto the soil. She looked healthier now, her back straighter, her skin showing a soft glow instead of the dull shade it once had dyed in the months since Naren had freed her. Lura had learned many things. She could speak the local human trade language with more confidence. She had learned to cook meals from both her own world and his. And she could even work the tools for repairing simple machines. But what mattered most was that she had learned to trust. That trust, however, was about to be tested. A transport ship descended in the distance, its silver hull glinting in the sunlight. It landed in the open field beyond the river. Naren frowned, knowing that ships rarely came to this quiet part of the planet without reason. Lura noticed his expression. "Do you know them?" she asked softly. "I might," Naren replied. "But if they are who I think they are, this could be trouble." They walked toward the field as the ship's hatch opened. 3 figures emerged, wearing the dull gray uniforms of a merchant syndicate. Naren recognized their leader instantly. A tall, narrow-faced man named Varek. They had crossed paths years ago, and it had not ended well. "Naren," Varek called out with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "It has been a long time." Naren stood still, his hands at his sides. "What brings you here, Varek?" Varek's gaze shifted to Lura, and his smile grew. "We are here for business. And it seems you have something that belongs to us." Lura's shoulders stiffened. Her hands trembled slightly, but she held her ground. "She does not belong to anyone," Naren said firmly. Varek's companions stepped forward, their boots pressing into the soft soil. "We have records," one of them said. "She is registered property of the Zarlik Trade House. They want her back." "She is free," Naren replied, his voice steady. "Freedom is not recognized under our contract law," Varek said. "We are here to enforce the agreement." Lura's heart pounded in her chest. The thought of going back to chains filled her with fear. She had just learned what it meant to make her own choices, to laugh, to rest without fear of punishment. She looked at Naren, who did not take his eyes off Varek. "I paid for her release," Naren said. "I have the papers." "Your papers mean nothing outside human law," Varek replied. "We operate under syndicate law, and under our law, she is stolen property." Naren took a slow breath. "Then maybe your law does not apply here." The Tension between them grew thicker. The two men behind Varric shifted their hands closer to their weapons. Lyra noticed and instinctively stepped back, but Naren raised his hand slightly, signaling her to stay behind him. "You know what will happen if you resist," Varric said. "I know exactly what will happen," Naren replied, "and I am ready for it." Varric studied him for a long moment, then gave a short laugh. "You are still as stubborn as ever." He turned to leave, but his parting words carried a warning. "We will be back, and next time, we will not talk first." The ship lifted off, leaving a swirl of dust behind. Lyra stepped closer to Naren. "They will come again," she said quietly. "Yes," Naren admitted, "but we will be ready." That day, they began preparing. Naren checked the old defense grid that surrounded the valley, repairing broken sections and restoring power to the watchtowers. Lyra learned how to use the signal beacon to call for help, and Naren taught her the basics of using a plasma cutter for both work and protection. At night, they sat by the small fire inside the farmhouse. The glow lit their faces as they spoke. About the future, Lyra wanted to believe they could face whatever was coming. Naren did not lie to her. He told her it would be dangerous, but he promised he would not let her go without a fight. In the quiet hours before sleep, Lyra thought about the chains she had once worn. They had been made of metal, but the fear they carried had been heavier. Now, even with danger ahead, she felt lighter. She had something she had never had before, someone who believed her life was worth protecting. Outside, the stars shone brightly in the alien sky and in the distance. The sound of the river carried softly through the night, but beyond that, calm, trouble was on its way, and neither of them knew how soon it would arrive. The sun rose over the small valley where the old human, Rian, had built his quiet home. The warm light fell on the garden, the small river, and the hills that surrounded them. Lyra stood near the wooden fence, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She had never known mornings like this before she met Rian. Every day in the past had been a chain, a command, and a dark room. Now she could breathe fresh air and feel the earth under her feet. Rian walked toward her carrying a small tray with bread and a cup of warm drink. He placed it on the fence and looked at her with a calm smile. "You have been thinking again," he said gently. Lyra nodded. "I am thinking about the station. I am thinking about the others like me." Rian sighed. "I know. I have been thinking too." They sat together at the fence. Birds sang in the trees, and the wind carried the scent of flowers. Lyra spoke softly. "When you took me from that place, I thought I was only one small life, but I have learned many things here. I have learned that chains can be broken. I have learned that a person is more than a servant." Rian looked at her seriously. "That is why I believe you can decide your own path now." Later that day, Rian took out an old travel case and placed it on the table. Inside were small tools, maps, and a communicator. He showed Lyra the map of the sector. "This is where the station is. This is where the transport routes are. And this is the free world zone. You could go there if you wish. There are colonies where no one owns anyone." Lyra touched the map with her finger. The free world seemed so far away. Rian spoke again. "If you want, I will go with you. But I am old. Lyra, my legs are slow, and I cannot run forever. You may choose to go alone. I will not stop you." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She walked outside and looked at the stars. Each point of light was a place she had never seen. The wind whispered in the grass, and she thought about the other servants still trapped. Could she help them? Could she even reach them? The next morning, she made her choice. "I want to see the free world," she told Rian. "But I also want to return for the others." Rian smiled. "Then we will make a plan." They spent the next weeks preparing. Rian repaired an old cargo flyer he had kept in his shed. Lyra learned how to use the navigation system and how to hide the ship's signal from scanners. She trained her body, running along the hills and lifting crates, building strength she had never needed before. One afternoon, while repairing the engine, Rian handed her a small pendant. It was made of polished metal with the symbol of an open hand. "This was given to me when I helped a colony many years ago. It means friendship between free people. If you meet others who know this sign, They will help you. Lyra closed her fingers. Rounded and nodded. Finally, the day came. The cargo flyer lifted off, leaving the valley behind. Lyra sat in the pilot's seat, her hand steady on the controls. Rian sat beside her, watching the horizon grow smaller. They flew past green fields, deserts, and mountains until the stars filled the sky. After days of travel, they reached the border of the free worlds. There was no wall, only a change in the beacons. In the signals in space, Lyra felt something in her chest, a lightness, a strength. She had crossed into a place where no one could claim her. They landed on a small colony world with open markets and streets full of people from many species. Lyra walked through the crowd, amazed. No one looked at her with the eyes of a master. No one ordered her to kneel. For the first time, she felt invisible in the best way. But she did not forget her promise. With Rian's help, she spoke to groups who helped those still in chains. They gave her routes, codes, and contacts. She learned about hidden stations, secret passages, and the ships that could carry people away without being caught. One evening, as the sun set over the colony's port, Lyra stood beside the flyer. Rian leaned on his cane, looking tired but proud. "You have a mission now," he said. "I cannot go on every journey with you. My place is here, but I will wait for you to return." Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder. "I will return, and I will bring others with me." Rian nodded. "Then go. The stars are waiting." She stepped into the flyer and started the engines. The ship rose into the darkening sky. She could see the colony lights below, shining like a promise. Ahead was the station, the danger, and the chance to change the lives of many. The chains were behind her now. Ahead was freedom, not just for herself, but for those still waiting in the shadows. Lyra gripped the controls and set her course. She was no longer the toothless servant from the auction. She was a free traveler, a rescuer, and a friend to the lost, and somewhere, far across the stars, others would one day speak her name as the one who came for them when hope was almost gone.